Hi, welcome to my Parsha Shir. Today our Shir is about Parshat Chayei Sarah, and this Shir is sponsored by Lee Samson in memory of his dear wife Anne Samson, Rachel Rivka, Bas Matzio HaKohen, Aleha Sholem, whose yahrzeit was on the 11th of Elul. May her neshama have an aliyah. May we be zoche to see Tchias HaMesim. Few topics spark as much heartfelt discussion and heated debate in the Jewish world today as what has come to be known as the Shidduch crisis. It's a phrase that encapsulates a painful, widespread reality, the difficulty singles face in finding the right person to marry. And while this challenge isn't unique to Orthodox Jews, dating and forming meaningful relationships is, after all, a universal struggle. The stakes in the frum world often feel much higher. In Orthodox Judaism, marriage isn't just about personal happiness or companionship. It's about fulfilling a spiritual mission, building a family, and creating a home filled with Torah values. Marriage is the bedrock of Jewish life. So when people face obstacles in this area, it feels less like a personal hiccup and more like a communal crisis. If you dig into the details and data, and believe me, there's plenty of data, it becomes clear that the Shidduch crisis is really a perfect storm of social, demographic, and emotional challenges. Take the recent study by the OU titled "The Challenges of Singlehood Among American Orthodox Jews." It highlights several key factors, including an age gap where older men insist on marrying younger women. This creates a significant imbalance in certain age groups, leaving many women feeling like they're competing for an ever-shrinking pool of potential matches. The numbers are stark. Fewer men, more single women, and mounting frustration all round. Of course, technology has come to the rescue, or at least it's trying to. These days, the Shidduch process isn't just about shadchonim with Rolodexes, it's also about apps and websites with quirky names like Locks Club, marketed as for Jews with ridiculously high standards, because humility is overrated, apparently. Then there's J-Swipe, the Jewish version of Tinder, where you can swipe right on someone because you both like kugel. And let's not forget Saw You at Sinai, where matchmaking meets meticulous spreadsheets of preferences, ensuring you can simultaneously feel judged by a computer algorithm and a shadchan. If nothing else, these platforms prove that no matter how ancient the problem, Jews will find a modern and occasionally ridiculous way to approach it. And then there's the cultural piece. Rising expectations play a major role, what some might call checklist syndrome. People feel pressured to hold out for the perfect partner, someone who's both brilliant and humble, financially successful but not materialistic, socially connected yet modest, spiritually aligned and emotionally available. Oh, and ideally, they should be 6 feet tall. It's a checklist that can feel impossible to fulfill. This pressure, combined with family involvement and communal norms, turns an already challenging process into a daunting mountain to climb. The emotional toll is enormous. That same OU study found that 62% of singles reported anxiety about being unmarried, and nearly half admitted that it negatively impacts their self-esteem. It's not just singles feeling this pressure either. Families worry endlessly about their children. Grandparents feel the sting of seeing others' simchas come and go. And rabbis are caught in the crossfire. Matchmaker, therapist, and advocate, all rolled into one. I know this firsthand. People come to me regularly with questions, hopes, and, frankly, pleas. Do you know someone for my daughter? She's amazing, but she hasn't found anyone yet. Can you suggest a nice girl for my nephew? He's such a catch, and no one sees it. These aren't just passing queries. They're emotional outpourings filled with urgency and, yes, frustration. And here's the thing. While the term Shidduch crisis feels very 21st century, the struggle to find the right person to marry is as old as humanity itself. It's nothing new. The Torah itself takes this challenge head-on, dedicating an entire chapter to one of the most detailed and moving narratives, the story of Eliezer's mission to find Rivka as a wife for Yitzchak. This isn't just an ancient tale of divine providence and matchmaking, it's a guidebook. Eliezer's journey and Rivka's extraordinary actions offer profound lessons for navigating relationships in every generation. Through this story, we will uncover timeless truths about the importance of kindness, the role of faith, and the delicate balance between human effort and trust in Hashem. These lessons resonate today, perhaps more than ever. So, today, let's dive into this story together. We'll explore what it has to teach us about finding the right person, supporting others in their search, and building lasting relationships. And who knows, we might just find some much-needed hope and wisdom for ourselves, or someone we love along the way. Let's start with what might seem a bit surprising. Avraham, the man who had made Canaan his home, who had dedicated himself to spreading belief in God among the people living there, absolutely refused to consider a Canaanite girl for his son Yitzchak. Really? He lived among them, he worked with them, and he even made peace treaties with their leaders. But when it came to marrying into their families, it was a hard no. Why? What was so bad about the Canaanites? The Torah spells it out in Bereshis, chapter 24, Pasuk Gimel. Avram made Eliezer swear not to take a wife for Yitzchak from the daughters of the Canaanites. According to Rashi, it was simple. The Canaanites were steeped in idolatry and moral corruption. Avraham was clear as could be. Yitzchak getting married wasn't just about him building a family for himself. He was laying the foundation of a nation whose mission was to bring ethical monotheism to the world, which meant that a wife for Yitzchak had to share that mission. And Avraham believed no Canaanite woman would or ever could do that. But wait a second. The Canaanites weren't the only idol worshippers around. The family back in Haran, the very people Avraham wanted Yitzchak to marry, were also idolaters. Why were they any better? The Or HaChaim helps us out here. He explains that while the people in Haran weren't perfect, they definitely had their flaws, as we will find out in glorious Technicolor and Dolby Stereo. Their idolatry was more superficial, more cultural than ingrained. The Canaanites, on the other hand, had idolatry and immorality woven into the very fabric of their society. Bringing a woman from Haran into Avraham's household meant she'd be open to transformation, but a Canaanite woman, that was a lost cause. Then there's the practical side of things. Some might even say that this was a political consideration. The Chizkuni points out that Avraham Avinu didn't want anyone to think his family's claim to the land of Israel came from intermarriage with the locals. Remember, Avraham was promised the land directly by God, by Hashem. Marrying a Canaanite woman might give the impression that the Jewish people owed their inheritance to some kind of political or social alliance, and Avraham wanted to avoid that at all costs. Avraham's careful approach to finding a wife for Yitzchak teaches us a lot about the importance of aligning values in relationship. He wasn't willing to compromise on the spiritual or moral mission of his family, even if it meant looking further afield. This idea resonates deeply in the context of today's Shidduch crisis, where singles and their families often grapple with questions of what matters most in a potential partner. Are we prioritizing the right things? Are we focused on shared values and long-term vision? Or Are we distracted by superficial concerns or the convenience of what's nearby? Abraham reminds us that the right match might not always be the easiest or most obvious one. It might require effort, patience, or even stepping out of our comfort zones. But if the goal is to build a home that reflects our values and our purpose, it's worth it. For those in the Shidduch process, this story is a powerful reminder to focus on what truly matters, finding someone whose character and potential align with your vision for a meaningful future. And for those helping others in this journey, it's a reminder to support, guide, and encourage, not to settle. And then we have Eliezer, poor, loyal Eliezer. He's been by Abraham's side through thick and thin, running his household, managing his affairs, and generally being the guy Abraham could count on, always count on. So naturally, when Abraham sends him to find a wife for Yitzchak, Eliezer might rightfully have thought to himself, hey, wait a second, hold on a moment, what about my daughter? Like, hello, I'm right here. In fact, the Midrash picks up on this. Eliezer's question to Avraham Avinu, what if the woman doesn't want to come back with me? Hints at his hope that Avraham might settle for his own family instead, for Eliezer's family. But Avraham shuts that down immediately. Why? Because Eliezer was a Canaanite. And it wasn't personal. Eliezer was a special person. He wanted the best for Yitzchak and, of course, for Avraham. It was about the mission. But the Meshech Chochmah explains that Yitzchak's wife needed to be someone who could fully integrate into the vision of the Jewish people, untainted by the negative influences of Canaanite society. Eliezer's daughter, no matter how wonderful she might have been, I'm sure she wasn't part of that picture. In today's world, Eliezer's situation might feel painfully familiar to singles and their families. How often do we hear, what about so-and-so? They're such a wonderful person. Why not them? And it's a valid question. And yet, just as Avraham knew that Yitzchak's match had to align with the bigger, the greater, the larger mission, so too in our contemporary scene, the right match isn't just about who's nearby or who's convenient. It's about shared values, compatible visions, and the ability to build something meaningful together. The process can feel frustrating, sometimes agonizing, but as Eliezer's story reminds us, the right person, the one destined to be the part of the mission, is worth the effort, even if it means traveling beyond what's familiar or expected. For singles and their families navigating this challenge today, it's a comforting thought. Just as Eliezer succeeded, guided by divine providence, so too every search for a Shidduch is guided by Hashem's hand, even when the road feels long and arduous. But there was another reason Abraham sends Eliezer to his family in Haran, and it's all about relationships. The Rabbeinu Bachya points out that marrying within a homogeneous group often leads to more peace and harmony. Abraham didn't want Yitzchak married to someone who might resent him for being from a different culture or background. A shared origin, even with its flaws, made for a stronger foundation. This idea of seeking common ground in relationships feels especially relevant today, as so many singles navigate a world of increasing diversity and complexity and individuality. While we celebrate individuality, it's also true that shared values, culture, and background often form the bedrock of a strong and peaceful partnership. Avraham Avinu understood that compatibility isn't just about who you are, it's about how your stories, your values, your perspectives align. In today's Shidduch process, this might mean prioritizing the deeper connections over superficial differences, focusing on what truly unites rather than what divides. Whether it's a shared heritage, values, or vision for the future, these commonalities can serve as the glue that holds a relationship together through life's inevitable ups and downs. And here's where it gets really fascinating. According to the Kedushas Levi, this rejection of Eliezer's daughter wasn't just about logistics or morals. There was something spiritual at play. Rivka, who would eventually become Yitzchak's wife, had a soul that was destined for greatness. Her incredible capacity for kindness, for chesed, her ability to draw water, not just for Eliezer, but for all his camels, wasn't a coincidence. It was an echo of the chesed Abraham had infused into the world. In fact, the Zohar suggests that Abraham's life mission of spreading kindness and faith set the stage for Rivka to become the perfect partner for Yitzchak. She wasn't just the right girl, she was the girl. Now let's pause here for a second and think about what all this means for us. Abraham didn't just go for convenience or proximity. He didn't settle for what was easy. Instead, he prioritized values, mission, and compatibility. That's a lesson we can all take to heart. Whether we're matchmaking for someone else or navigating relationships ourselves, the goal isn't just to find someone who works, it's to find someone who shares our vision for the future and who's willing to grow with us along the way. Which was why Abraham didn't just reject the local Canaanite girls because of their values, or lack thereof. He also avoided considering Eliezer's daughter, even though Eliezer was essentially his right-hand man, managing his household and showing incredible loyalty. If you were in Abraham's shoes, wouldn't Eliezer's family feel like the obvious choice? They were close, loyal, and totally immersed in Abraham's environment. But Abraham saw things differently. The Malbim dives into this idea and explains that Eliezer, for all his greatness, came from the line of Ham, whose descendants were cursed back in Noach's time. Abraham believed that Yitzchak, as the bearer of the divine covenant, couldn't be tied to that spiritual baggage. It wasn't about Eliezer's personal merit. He clearly had plenty. But about the larger, long-term mission of building a people whose values and lineage would reflect their unique purpose. Abarbanel offers a more practical perspective. He points out that if Yitzchak married Eliezer's daughter, it could blur the lines of authority in Abraham's household. Eliezer might have been tempted to take on a leadership role or assert undue influence through his family's connection. We're married into the family, now we're connected to Yitzchak, we're in charge. Abraham wasn't willing to risk those complications, no matter how devoted Eliezer was. But it's not just about rejecting what's wrong, it's also about having the courage to go beyond what's familiar. Think about it. Abraham didn't just settle for what was convenient or comfortable. He sent Eliezer on a distant mission, far away, another country, to find a wife from Abraham's family back in Haran. Why not just look closer to home? Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch gives us an answer that's deeply inspiring. Abraham understood that when building something great, whether it's a family or it's a community or a legacy, you sometimes have to think outside the box. Staying within your immediate social circle can be limiting, especially if it doesn't align with your values or your real goals. So what does all this have to do with us, you and me? Plenty. First, Abraham's decision reminds us to prioritize the things that really matter in relationships. It's easy to get caught up in the externals, how someone looks, where they come from, what kind of job they have. But Abraham teaches us that we must think long term. What kind of values does this person have? Are they open to growing? Are they ready for growth? Will they help build a home filled with purpose and with meaning? Second, there's a lesson here about not settling for convenience. In today's world where swiping through profiles has become the norm, it's tempting to look for a good enough match that's within arm's reach. But sometimes, like Abraham, you need to think bigger. Maybe that means expanding your network, being open to someone from a different community or different background, or even reevaluating your own priorities to find someone whose values truly align with yours. What are you looking for and what should you be looking for? Finally, there's a message for those helping others in the Shidduch process. Avraham didn't just sit back and hope for the best. He actively sent Eliezer with a plan for parents, for friends, grandparents, and community members involved in matchmaking. You may be a shadchan. This is a call to action. Be proactive, think creatively, and support those searching for their partner with empathy and, of course, encouragement. Okay, now let's talk about Rivka, one of the most fascinating figures in the Torah, and, spoiler alert, the new matriarch of the Jewish people. Her introduction into the biblical story is not just dramatic, it's layered with meaning, packed with symbolism, and overflowing with lessons. Rivka doesn't just appear on the scene, she bursts into the narrative like a breath of fresh air. Let's unpack her story, piece by piece. Picture this. Eliezer is on a mission to find a wife for Yitzchak. No pressure, right? Just find the perfect match for the future of the Jewish people. And he doesn't even know what she looks like. Instead, Eliezer prays for a sign. Now, this isn't a casual, God help me out kind of prayer. The Gemara in Tanis, Daf Daled Amud Aleph, describes how the tzaddikim of the Torah relied on signs and divine providence when making critical decisions. Eliezer specifically asks for kindness as the defining trait of Yitzchak's future wife. Why? Because kindness isn't just a nice personality quirk, it's the cornerstone of Avraham Avinu's household. Enter Rifka, the chesed powerhouse. We meet Rifka at the well because where else do people meet in the Torah? And right away, she's all action. Eliezer asks for water, and Rifka doesn't just hand him a cup and call it a day. She offers to draw water for his camels. All his camels. Do you know how much water camels drink? A single camel can drink up to 25 gallons after a long trip. Multiply that by, let's say, 10 camels, and you're looking at Rivka hauling hundreds of gallons of water. She doesn't hesitate, doesn't complain, and critically, she doesn't wait to be asked. The Midrash paints Rivka as a whirlwind, as a tornado of kindness and efficiency. She saw the need and filled it, going above and beyond what anyone could reasonably expect. The Kedushas Levi takes this further, explaining that Rivka's chesed wasn't just practical, it was spiritual. She didn't simply do acts of kindness, she embodied kindness. Her every action was infused with a higher purpose. The point is, Rivka isn't just kind, she's also strong-willed. When Eliezer meets her family and asks for her hand in marriage on Yitzchak's behalf, they turn to Rivka and ask her, will you go with this man? Her answer? One word, Elech, I will go. No hesitation, no second guessing. Elech. It's simple, decisive and profound. This one word, Elech, captures her strength, her courage and her willingness to leave her family, her home and everything familiar to step into the unknown. It's a defining moment for Rivka, showing her readiness to embrace her role in the covenantal journey of the Jewish people. Her response is a model of faith and determination, a testament to her remarkable character. The Malbim notes that Rivka's willingness to leave her family and her homeland mirrors Abraham's journey when he left everything behind to follow God's command, Lech lecha me'artecha me'moladtecha bebeis avicha. This wasn't just a practical decision, it was a leap of faith. Rivka's decisiveness shows us her inner strength and her readiness to take on the monumental role of being Yitzchak's wife and the next matriarch of the Jewish people. Rivka's story, and especially her decisive Elech, I will go, offers a profound lesson for us today in a world where decision-making can feel overwhelming and where hesitation often stems from fear of the unknown. Rivka's clarity and courage stand out as an inspiring example. She didn't wait for certainty or for guarantees. She recognized an opportunity to fulfill her purpose and stepped forward with confidence and with faith. For those navigating life's challenges, whether in relationships or could be career choices or just personal growth, Rivka reminds us that sometimes the greatest leaps forward come when we embrace the unknown with strength and determination. Her story encourages us to look beyond the immediate discomfort of change and to trust in the potential for greatness on the other side. It's a call to action. When faced with a defining moment, don't hesitate. Step up and say, Elech, I will go, and move toward your destiny. Let's go back to the well for just a minute. Wells in the Torah aren't just about water, they're metaphors for spiritual sustenance. The Zohar explains that Rivka at the well symbolizes a connection to the source of divine blessing. By drawing water for Eliezer and his camels, Rivka is tapping into that blessing and showing that she is the conduit for the continuation of Abraham's legacy. It's no coincidence that so many of our forefathers and mothers meet at wells. Wells are where physical and spiritual worlds meet. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Was Eliezer's test fair? Some commentators, like the Radak, argue that it was risky to rely on a test of character alone. What if Rivka had been kind but lacked other important qualities? But the Chasam Sofer defends Eliezer, explaining that kindness isn't just one trait among many, it's foundational. A person who has genuine chesed is likely to have other virtues as well, because chesed requires empathy, it requires humility, it requires strength. And the story of Rivka doesn't end when she leaves Haran with Eliezer. It's just the beginning. Her introduction as a chesed powerhouse sets the tone for her entire life. Later, when Rivka orchestrates the blessings for Yaakov over Esav, her actions reflect the same decisiveness and clarity of purpose. We see at the well, she understands what needs to be done and doesn't shy away from making hard choices. The Meshech Chochmah points out that Rivka's kindness wasn't just an isolated act, it was part of a larger mission. By going above and beyond for Eliezer, she demonstrated the qualities needed to raise the next generation of the Jewish people. She wasn't just marrying into Abraham's family, she was becoming a critical partner in fulfilling God's covenant. So, what can we learn from Rivka? First and foremost, that kindness matters, not just as a personality trait, but as a way of life. Rivka didn't wait for someone to tell her what to do or ask how she could help. She saw a need and she acted. In today's world, where we often get caught up in what's convenient or what's in it for us, Rivka reminds us to look beyond ourselves. Second, Rivka teaches us the importance of inner strength, whether it's leaving her family behind or making tough decisions later in life. She shows us that kindness and strength go hand in hand. Being good doesn't mean being a pushover. Oh no. Finally, Rivka's story challenges us to ask, are we looking for the right qualities in people? Whether it's in the Shidduch process or just building meaningful relationships, Rivka's example reminds us to prioritize character, generosity, and faith over superficial concerns. Rivka isn't just a matriarch, she's a role model. Her story, from the well to the tent of Yitzchak, teaches us what it means to live a life of purpose, courage, and kindness. And that's a lesson we can all draw from, no matter where we are in our own journeys. One additional layer to Rivka's story comes from Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, who emphasizes that Rivka's actions at the well weren't just about kindness. They demonstrated the ability to anticipate and act. She didn't wait for Eliezer to ask for help with the camels. She proactively identified the need, and then she went ahead and filled that need. This kind of foresight and initiative is what separates someone who's kind from someone who's a true builder of a home. It's a reminder that in looking for a life partner, it's not just about what they do, but about how they think, whether they can see beyond themselves to create something bigger. The Rashbam focuses on Rivka's modesty. While her actions were grand, huge, they were performed with simplicity and humility. She didn't seek recognition or applause. Her kindness was an extension of her natural character, not a performance. The late Rebbetzin Jungreis, whom I knew well, was a master of encouragement and inspiration, especially when it came to the topic of Shidduchim. Those of you who knew her will know that. She once shared a story about a young woman who came to her, frustrated and tearful, saying, "I've been dating for such a long time and I'm just not finding anyone. Maybe I'm too picky, or maybe there's no one out there for me." Rebbetzin Jungreis looked at her and said, "Do you know why a diamond is so valuable? Because it's rare." And why is it rare? Do you know how a diamond becomes perfect, becomes what it is? It has to undergo unbelievable pressure. The pressure you're feeling now isn't because you're failing, it's because you're becoming the person you're meant to be. You're a diamond. And when the right person comes along, they'll recognize that diamond, just as you'll recognize the diamond in them. The woman smiled through her tears, feeling hope for the first time in ages, and a few months later she met her husband, and years later she wrote to Rebbetzin Jungreis to thank her, saying that those words carried her through every moment of doubt. There's also a beautiful story about the Chidushei Harim, the first Rebbe of Ger. A young man, brilliant in Torah, but from a humble background, approached the Rebbe, saying he'd been rejected repeatedly by families because he didn't come from a prestigious heritage, lineage. The Rebbe smiled and he said to him, "You don't need a match from a family with a famous name. You need a match with a famous soul." A few weeks later, the Rebbe facilitated a Shidduch between the young man and the daughter of a merchant, a businessman. The girl's father was initially resistant, but the Rebbe reassured him. This match isn't about wealth or status, it's about Torah and destiny. Years later, that couple's children actually became leaders in their own right, and they fulfilled the Rebbe's, as it were, prophecy. For parents and grandparents worried about their children or grandchildren's prospects, it's important to take a step back and recognize that the Shidduch process, while painful at times, is ultimately guided by Hashem. Avraham sent Eliezer with a mission, but he relied on divine intervention to succeed. Rivka didn't find Yitzchak by chance. She found him because she was destined to. The Gemara in Sotah Daf Beis Amud Aleph famously says, 40 days before a child is conceived, a heavenly voice announces, "The daughter of so-and-so is destined for so-and-so." Now, this doesn't mean we sit back and wait, but it does mean we can take comfort in knowing that there's a plan. Hashem has a plan. Here's what to remember. Every individual has their own journey. Some paths take longer, some seem circuitous, but Rifka teaches us that the right match will emerge, often in unexpected ways. Just as she drew water for Eliezer without knowing she was about to meet her destiny, so too the right person might come into someone's life in a moment they least expect. And to those in the midst of their search for the right Shidduch, you're not alone. Rivka's story is a reminder that the qualities you're building in yourself, kindness, initiative, strength, faith, are what will help you recognize the right person when they come along. And remember, there's no such thing as too late or too hard. Rivka had to leave her home and family to fulfill her destiny, and it wasn't easy, but she made the leap. And because of her courage, she became part of something far greater. The journey may be challenging, but every date, every conversation, and even every disappointment is part of shaping you into the person who will build a Jewish home with the right partner. It's not about finding someone who checks all the boxes. It's about finding someone who shares your vision for the future and who wants to build that future together with you. Rifka's story is much more than an ancient narrative. It's a timeless guide. Her kindness, her strength, and her willingness to act decisively offer lessons not just for Shidduchim, but for life. And for those searching for a match or helping others to find theirs, her story is a source of comfort and inspiration. The well isn't just a place of physical water, it's a metaphor for the blessings waiting for us when we dig deep, act with purpose, and trust in Hashem's plan. So, whether you're drawing water for camels, supporting someone else's journey, or waiting patiently by the well, Rivka's example reminds us that the best is yet to come. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. Thank you.